Hey everybody, it's Miss Christian. I hope you guys had a nice restful weekend. I'm going to go ahead and get started right away. So the last time that I posted, I kind of combined day 3 and 4 together. I had you guys work on some quoting questions and inference questions. So what I'm going to basically do today is overview a few things that you guys should all know. One being text features, as you can see on my whiteboard. Also, just going through the text itself. So I will be reading through the whole entire text with you guys today. So if you have any questions, leave a comment, or if you're in my class, message me on Class Dojo or comment on Google Classroom. Also, I will be creating a turn-in link for you guys on Google Classroom to turn in your questions from the quoting. I'm also going to be posting quiz questions for you guys today on Google Classroom and in the comment section on YouTube. So I'm going to go ahead and get started. The first thing I want to review is text features. So anybody who's in my class already has a good idea of what text features are, but this is for everybody who needs just a quick refresher. So text features are basically those extra hints and clues that authors put in the text to help you understand the text better. They're almost kind of like a strategy that you could use. So for example, here's a couple of the ones that I always go over. There's headings. So headings are the miniature titles within a text that tell you what that section is all about. So if you're looking here, you'll see this is a heading right here, and then the highlighted sections are headings right here. They tell you like this whole section's all about the manifest destiny, and then so on and so forth. Okay. So the next thing to go over are captions. So if you're looking at the first page of this article, a caption is right under the picture, and it's basically explaining to you what the picture is about. Okay? Now, the next one that we have here are the pictures themselves. Pictures are there to help you guys understand what is going on and give you like a visual representation of what you're reading about. The next is diagrams. So diagrams are pictures with labels such as, like, if you were reading an article about the human body, there might be a diagram of a skeleton, a human skeleton with labels. Okay? And then the next thing is bolded text. So sometimes within a text, you'll notice that anything that has bold letters, so the text is darker than everything else, it might mean that it's important. Sometimes they do it with vocabulary words, not always, but just know that it's there. So the main thing to remember about text features is that they are there to help you. And they also make it a lot easier when you guys are completing assignments. So with that being said, I'm going to go ahead and get started on reading the text to you guys. I'm going to start at the very beginning. So if you want to follow along with me, I'm going to read the caption as well, and then I'm going to continue. Okay. This is also at a Lexile level of 1140. So if you printed out a text with a different Lexile level, you can still follow along with me. I'm just going to be explaining it in a little more in depth. And if you have questions about the text or anything that you weren't sure about or didn't understand, please leave a comment or contact me on Google Classroom or Class Dojo. Okay. The title is An Overview of U.S. Westward Expansion. I'm going to read the caption now. The first Fort Laramie as it looked before 1840, a painting from memory by Alfred Jacob Miller in 1858 to 1860. Fort Laramie lay at the crossroads of an old north-south Native American trail and what became known as the Oregon Trail. It was called Fort Laramie because of the nearby Laramie Mountains. Originally established as a private fur trading fort in 1834, Fort Laramie became the largest military post on the northern plains before its abandonment in 1890. It witnessed the entire saga of America's western expansion and Native American resistance to expansion into their territories. All right, now I'm on the first section. In 1803, President Thomas Jefferson purchased the territory of Louisiana from France for $15 million. The Louisiana purchase stretched from the Mississippi River to the Rocky Mountains and from Canada to New Orleans and the Gulf of Mexico. Altogether, this massive new territory doubled the size of the United States. To Jefferson, westward expansion, incorporating new land to the west of the original eastern and southern states, was the key to the nation's health. He believed that a republic depended on independent citizenry for its survival. For Jefferson, what made independence possible was land ownership, especially the ownership of small farms. The United States would have to continue to expand to provide enough land for its citizens. Westward expansion is one of the defining themes of 19th century American history. However, it is not just the story of Jefferson's expanding Empire of Liberty. On the contrary, I'm on the second page now. In the 6 decades after the Louisiana Purchase, westward expansion very nearly destroyed the United States. And look at, here's a text feature I pointed out the other day of the map. And remember, the green area shows the area of land that was purchased through the Louisiana Purchase. All right, the heading that I'm on is Manifest Destiny. I keep forgetting to highlight this one, so I'm going to do that. I always tell my kids to go through and highlight all the headings. Makes it easier later. Okay. Manifest Destiny. By 1840, nearly 7 million Americans, 40% of the nation's population, lived in the West. Most had left their homes in the East in search of economic opportunity. Remember, economic has to do with money. Like Thomas Jefferson, many of these pioneers associated westward migration, land ownership, and farming with freedom. In Europe, large numbers of factory workers formed a dependent and seemingly permanent working class. By contrast, in the United States, the western frontier offered the possibility of independence and the chance to make enough money to move up to a higher social class. In 1845, journalist John O'Sullivan put a name to the idea that helped pull many pioneers toward the western frontier. Westward migration was an essential part of the project of America as a nation. He argued, and it was Americans' manifest destiny, their clear and obvious destiny, to carry the great experiment of liberty to the edge of the continent. The survival of American freedom depended on it. Okay, I'm on the next heading that says Westward Expansion and Slavery. Meanwhile, the question of whether slavery would be allowed in the new western states shadowed every conversation about the frontier. In 1820, the Missouri Compromise attempted to resolve this question. It had admitted Missouri to the Union as a slave state and Maine as a free state. If you don't know the difference, Maine would mean that slavery was not allowed because it's a free state, and then of course slave states were states that allowed slavery. More importantly, it declared that in the future slavery would be prohibited in all parts of the Louisiana Purchase north of the southern boundary of Missouri. However, the Missouri Compromise did not apply to new territories that were not part of the Louisiana Purchase, and so the issue of slavery continued to fester. Meanwhile, southern farmers grew more and more dependent on slave labor. Northern farmers grew increasingly resentful as many felt slaves gave Southerners an unfair advantage that made it harder for them to earn a living. Okay, I'm on the next heading. The heading says Westward Expansion and the Mexican War. Despite the conflict over slavery, Americans kept migrating west in the years after the Missouri Compromise was adopted. Thousands crossed the Rockies to the Oregon Territory, which belonged to Great Britain, and thousands more moved into the Mexican territories of California, New Mexico, and Texas. In 1837, American settlers in Texas joined with Texans of Spanish origin, known as Tejanos, and won independence from Mexico. They petitioned to join the United States as a slave state. Interesting. Texas' request was not immediately granted for fear it would upset the careful balance the Missouri Compromise had achieved. Then, in 1844, Southern cotton planter James K. Polk was elected president. Thanks to the maneuvering of Polk and his allies, Texas joined the Union as a slave state in February 1846. I'm on the last page. That same month, Polk declared war against Mexico, claiming falsely that the Mexican army had invaded our territory and shed American blood on American soil, so he lied. The war proved to be relatively unpopular, partly because many Northerners objected to what they saw as a war to expand the slaveocracy, so he didn't have everybody on his side. Westward Expansion and the Compromise of 1850. This is the next heading, and I need to make sure I don't forget to highlight it. I'm going to highlight the last one. Okay. Westward Expansion and the Compromise of 1850. In 1848, the Treaty of Guadalupe Hidalgo ended the Mexican War and added more than 1 million square miles, an area larger than Louisiana Purchase, to the United States. The addition of this land reopened the question the Missouri Compromise had seemingly settled: Would slavery be allowed in newly acquired American territories? After 2 years of increasingly heated debate, Kentucky Senator Henry Clay proposed another compromise. California would enter the Union as a free state. However, in the rest of the Mexican territory, the people who lived there would decide whether slavery would be allowed. So he was saying that they're going to let the people who live in these areas decide if they want to allow slavery or not. Bleeding Kansas. Last heading, last section of the text. In 1854, Illinois Senator Stephen A. Douglas proposed that 2 new states, Kansas and Nebraska, be established within the Louisiana Purchase territory. Under the terms of the Missouri Compromise, slavery would not be permitted in either state because both were north of Missouri. However, Douglas's proposal allowed the settlers to decide for themselves whether their states would be slave or free. Northerners were outraged. Douglas, in their view, had caved to the demands of the slaveocracy, and at their expense. Free soil settlers established a rival government against slave-owning settlers, and soon Kansas spiraled into civil war. Hundreds of people died in the fighting that ensued, known as Bleeding Kansas. A decade later, the Civil War in Kansas over slavery was followed by the nation's Civil War over the same issue. The question of slavery in the West, a place that seemed to symbolize American freedom, ended up nearly tearing the United States apart. So, if you don't remember, if you're in my class, we actually learned about the Civil War and what started the Civil War. So this is actually a really good text to read for us because it kind of explains what led up to the Civil War in a little more detail. So, last thing I want to say before I log off and post this for you guys is, 1, if you have questions about this text, you're confused about something, you need clarification on something, please leave me a comment and I will get back to you as soon as possible. Lastly, I am going to be posting a quiz for you guys to take, and then tomorrow I'm going to move on to a new article. Okay? Also, one last thing, I will be going live tonight at 6 p.m. to read Chapter 4. If you haven't had a chance, I did pre-record Chapter 3, and it's in 2 parts, so make sure you listen to that first before you guys join in for the live for Chapter 4. Okay? Well, if you have questions, you know how to contact me, and have a good rest of your day. Bye!